Picture this. It's 3:17 in the morning. The world is silent. Most people are deep in sleep, lost in dreams they'll barely remember come dawn. But in a converted office building on the outskirts of Leeds, something is happening that will haunt investigators for years to come. A security camera is recording 17 seconds of footage that will become the only evidence of what transpired in those final hours at the Northlight Sleep Institute. 17 seconds of a man who should have been unconscious, sitting bolt upright in his hospital bed, staring directly into the camera lens with eyes that seem to see far more than they should. His lips move slowly, deliberately, forming words that will chill everyone who hears them. By the next evening, that man, along with 14 other people, had vanished without a trace. No bodies, no evidence of struggle, no explanation, just gone. To understand what happened that night, we need to go back to the beginning, back to the Northlight Sleep Institute itself, a place that barely existed in the public consciousness. If you had tried to research Northlight online in early 2023, you would have found almost nothing. A single website, hastily constructed, filled with vague promises about unlocking the architecture of dreams and mapping the hidden pathways of the sleeping mind. The kind of language that sounds impressive, but means nothing. The kind of language that should have been a warning. The institute operated out of a converted office block, the kind of building you'd drive past 100 times without noticing. Grey concrete, tinted windows, the sort of place where secrets could be kept. And secrets, as we'll discover, were exactly what Northlight was built on. In February 2023, advertisements began appearing in local newspapers and on university bulletin boards. The Northlight Sleep Institute was seeking participants for a paid sleep study. The terms seemed almost too good to be true. Check in each night at 9 p.m. Sleep under medical observation until 7 a.m. Go home. Repeat for 30 days. Payment: £1,000 upon completion. For cash-strapped students, night shift workers looking to reset their body clocks, and anyone needing quick money, it was an offer that was hard to refuse. Sleep for money. What could be easier? What could be safer? 12 people signed up. 12 ordinary people with ordinary lives, ordinary problems. They had no idea they were about to become part of something that would challenge everything we think we know about the nature of consciousness itself. The team overseeing the study was small, but appeared professional, at least on the surface. Dr. Leonard Harris, 53 years old, was the lead researcher. A neurologist with credentials from respected institutions, published papers on sleep disorders, and what seemed like a genuine passion for understanding the mysteries of the sleeping mind. But as we'll discover, Dr. Harris was hiding something that would prove far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Supporting him were two nurses, Claire Holloway and Marissa Collins. They alternated night shifts, monitoring the participants, ensuring their safety, recording their vital signs. Both were experienced. Both were trusted. Finally, there was Callum Price, the lab technician. His job was to monitor the EEG machines from the control room, tracking the brainwave patterns of sleeping participants, recording the electrical symphony of their dreams. Callum's jacket would later be found draped over his chair, as if he had simply stepped away for a moment and planned to return. He never did. What the participants didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that Dr. Harris had introduced an element to the study that went far beyond standard sleep research. Each night, before being fitted with the EEG electrodes, participants were given what Dr. Harris described as a sleep optimization supplement. A small, white pill that he claimed would help them achieve deeper, more restful sleep. Dr. Harris explained it as a proprietary blend of natural compounds, melatonin derivatives, Amino acids. Nothing you couldn't buy over the counter. He claimed it simply helped synchronize circadian rhythms with their monitoring equipment. But several participants were uneasy about taking an unknown substance. The pill had no markings, no identifying features, and Dr. Harris was vague about its exact composition. Emma Rodriguez, a 22-year-old art student, had questioned Dr. Harris about the pill on her third night. When she hesitated to take it, he reminded her about the money. £1,000. That was a lot of money for a student, for doing essentially nothing. Martin Locke, a security guard, had similar reservations. He confided to his girlfriend that the pill made him feel strange, not drowsy, but disconnected, as if his thoughts were floating just outside his head. He wanted to quit after the first week, but £1,000 was almost 2 months' rent. He convinced himself it was harmless. Justin Leland, a 34-year-old out-of-work actor who would later deliver that chilling warning, had been the most vocal about his concerns. When he asked what would happen if he refused to take the pill, Dr. Harris told him that the pill was essential for the study's success, that without it, his brain patterns wouldn't synchronize properly with the monitoring equipment. When Justin pressed for more details, Dr. Harris had simply smiled and said the pill would give him dreams beyond his wildest imagination. Those words would prove more prophetic than anyone could have anticipated. For 11 nights, everything proceeded according to Dr. Harris's plan. Participants arrived promptly at 9 p.m., reluctantly swallowed their mysterious pills, and were fitted with EEG electrodes before settling into their beds in the small dormitory. The pills worked quickly. Within minutes of ingestion, participants reported feeling relaxed, detached, as if they were viewing the world through a soft filter. Their brain patterns, displayed on Callum's monitors, showed unusual synchronization, waveforms that seemed to pulse in harmony across all 12 subjects. Dr. Harris moved between the beds like a conductor orchestrating a symphony, checking readings, making notes, occasionally adjusting equipment. To any observer, it would have looked like routine medical research. But even during these early nights, there were signs that something extraordinary was happening. The dreams began on night 3. Not just vivid dreams, shared dreams. Multiple participants reported experiencing identical dream scenarios. Endless white corridors that seemed to stretch beyond the horizon. Rooms with no doors or windows, and a voice calling to them from somewhere just out of sight. The dreams weren't like normal dreaming. They felt like being transported to another place. And the other participants were there too. Not dream versions of them, but actually them. They could talk, touch, interact, as if they were all physically present. When participants mentioned these shared experiences to Dr. Harris, he showed intense interest, but dismissed their concerns. He explained that the sleeping mind often gravitates towards archetypal imagery. Corridors, rooms, voices were common symbols in dream states. The fact that they were all experiencing similar imagery simply indicated that the sleep optimization supplement was working as intended. But his private notes told a different story. Dr. Harris wasn't just observing these dreams, he was creating them. On June 11th, 2023, at 10:48 p.m., Dr. Harris sent what would be his final email to the study's sponsors. The message was brief, professional, and deeply unsettling in hindsight. It read, "Trial proceeding beyond expectations. Participants showing remarkable dream synchronization and collective consciousness formation. The compound is working perfectly. Their minds are becoming truly linked. Tonight, we attempt Phase 7. If successful, we will have achieved something unprecedented in consciousness research. We'll report results tomorrow. Phase 7. The compound. Those phrases would later send investigators down a rabbit hole of research papers, archived documents, and theoretical frameworks that push the boundaries of what science considers possible. But that night, as Dr. Harris typed those words, he had no idea he was writing his own epitaph. The email was sent at 10:48 p.m. By 3:17 a.m., something had gone catastrophically wrong, and by the following evening, 15 people had vanished from the face of the earth. June 12th dawned grey and ordinary. In homes across Leeds, alarm clocks rang, coffee was brewed, and families began their daily routines. But as the morning wore on, something became clear. The participants from the Northlight Sleep Institute weren't coming home. Alana Mitchell, a 19-year-old university student, always texted her mother when she left the clinic. Always. By noon, her phone was going straight to voicemail. Peter Copley was supposed to meet his girlfriend for lunch. He never showed up. Justin Leland had promised to help his neighbour move furniture. He never arrived. One by one, families began to worry. Phone calls went unanswered. Text messages remained unread. By mid-afternoon, the first missing person reports were being filed. But it wasn't just the participants who had vanished. Dr. Harris had also disappeared. His car was found in the Institute's parking lot, not at his home, as would be expected. His keys were missing, his office was locked, and there was no sign of where he had gone. Callum Price's flatmate reported that his bed hadn't been slept in. By 5 p.m., police were dealing with multiple missing person reports, all connected to the same address, the Northlight Sleep Institute. At 6:15 p.m., Nurse Marissa Collins arrived for what would normally have been a routine night shift. Police had already been alerted to the missing persons reports and had contacted her earlier in the day, but she insisted on checking the facility herself before meeting with investigators. Ordinarily, she would expect to find the participants checking in, Dr. Harris reviewing the previous night's data, and Callum preparing the EEG equipment. Instead, she found a building shrouded in darkness. The parking lot contained several abandoned cars, including Dr. Harris's vehicle. The main entrance, which should have been brightly lit and welcoming, was locked tight. Marissa tried her keycard. The light flashed red. Access denied. She knocked on the glass doors, calling out. Her voice echoed in the empty lobby, but no one answered. She tried calling the clinic's main number. Through the glass, she could see the phone ringing at the reception desk, its shrill tone cutting through the silence. But no one picked up. Dr. Harris's mobile went straight to voicemail. Callum's phone did the same. Standing alone in that empty parking lot, with the weight of silence pressing down around her, Marissa took out her phone and rang the police officer who she had spoken to earlier in the day. Explaining where she was and what she had found, she perched on the edge of a raised flower bed and awaited their arrival. PC David Morgan and PC Tina Webb had responded to missing person calls before, but nothing quite like this. 15 people, all connected to the same location, all vanished simultaneously. They knocked on the doors, called out through the glass, and peered through windows. The building appeared empty, but something was wrong with the emptiness. It felt recent, as if life had only just departed. Through a side window, they could see the glow of electronic equipment still running. EEG monitors displayed flat lines where brainwaves should have been. Computer screens cast blue light across empty desks. It was as if everyone had simply stood up and walked away, leaving their lives frozen in time. The building manager arrived at 7:15 p.m. with a spare key. His hands shook as he unlocked the door. Whether from cold or fear, no one could say. The officers entered first, their footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. They called out, identifying themselves, asking if anyone was there. The only response was the hum of electrical equipment and the whisper of air conditioning. What they found inside would puzzle them for years to come. The dormitory was the most unsettling room. 12 beds arranged in neat rows, each one showing signs of recent occupation. The sheets were rumpled, pillows still held the impression of heads, and personal belongings were scattered around as if their owners had simply stepped away for a moment. Shoes placed neatly beside beds, overnight bags half unpacked, phones plugged into chargers, their screens dark but still connected to the wall. But it was what they found on the bedside tables that would prove most significant. 12 small paper cups, each stained with residue where pills had been dissolved in water before being administered. In the staff lounge, the scene was just as disturbing. A half-eaten sandwich sat on the table, the edges dry and curled up. A cup of tea had grown cold, a skin forming on its surface. A newspaper was folded open to the crossword, half completed in blue ink. It was as if time had stopped at exactly the moment everyone disappeared. Dr. Harris's office told a similar story. His laptop was missing from his desk, but everything else remained untouched. His cold coffee sat beside the keyboard. His jacket hung on the back of his chair. Most disturbing of all was what they found in his desk drawer. A small glass vial containing dozens of white pills, identical to the residue found in the paper cups. The vial was labelled in Dr. Harris's handwriting, Compound X7, Dream Bridge Protocol. In the control room, Callum's workstation was frozen mid-task. EEG readings scrolled across multiple monitors, but the lines were flat now. No brainwaves to record, no dreams to monitor. The officers searched every room, every closet, every possible hiding place. They found no signs of struggle, no evidence of forced entry, no indication that anyone had left the building. It was as if 15 people had simply ceased to exist. The next logical step was to check the security system. Surely the cameras would reveal what had happened during those crucial hours between Dr. Harris's last email and the discovery of the empty building. But when investigators accessed the security server, they found something that defied explanation. Every recording from the previous 24 hours had been wiped. Not just deleted, completely overwritten, as if someone had taken great care to ensure nothing could be recovered. Every hard drive, every backup, every redundant system had been systematically erased. The level of technical knowledge required for such a complete data wipe suggested either professional expertise or inside knowledge of the system. But who would have done this? And why? The investigators were about to give up when a technician made a discovery that would change everything. Hidden in a corrupted sector of one hard drive, a single file had survived the purge. 17 seconds of footage. Damaged, but recoverable. 17 seconds that would raise more questions than they answered. The timestamp read 3:17 a.m., June 12th, 2023. The camera angle showed the dormitory from above. 12 beds arranged in neat rows. 11 of the beds contained sleeping figures, their bodies still and peaceful under white sheets. But the 12th bed was different. Justin Leland, the out-of-work actor who had joined the study to earn extra money, was sitting bolt upright. His eyes were wide open, staring directly into the camera with an expression that was both blank and intensely focused. His lips began to move. The security camera had no audio capability, but investigators knew they were witnessing something crucial. The way Justin's mouth moved was deliberate, purposeful. He was clearly speaking, delivering some kind of message. But what was he saying? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Patricia Henley, a forensic lip-reading expert who had worked on dozens of criminal cases, was brought in to analyze the footage. She studied the 17 seconds of video frame by frame, watching Justin's mouth movements with the trained eye of someone who had spent decades translating silent speech into words. When she delivered her findings, the room fell silent. The subject was speaking clearly and deliberately. His lip movements indicated he was saying, "Here, the dreaming never ends. We are more awake than you have ever been." The words hung in the air like a curse. After delivering this message, Justin lay back down, closed his eyes, and became still. The recording ended there. There was no indication of what happened next, no sign of how Justin, or any of the others, had left the building. No clue about where they had gone. Just those words, spoken in the dead of night, carrying a message that no one understood. As news of the disappearances spread, the Northlight case became a major incident. Detective Inspector Oliver Talbot was assigned to lead the investigation, and his team began the painstaking process of piecing together what had happened. The discovery of the mysterious pills added a new dimension to the case. The vial found in Dr. Harris's desk was sent for chemical analysis, but the results only deepened the mystery. The compound was unlike anything forensic chemists had seen before. It contained traces of known substances: melatonin, tryptophan, gamma-aminobutyric acid. But there were several unidentified components. The molecular structure suggested it was designed to affect neurotransmitter activity in the brain, specifically in areas associated with REM sleep and dream formation. Interviews with family members revealed a disturbing pattern. In the days leading up to their disappearance, several participants had complained about their dreams. Not just vivid dreams, shared dreams. Multiple participants reported dreaming of the same locations. Endless white corridors that seemed to stretch forever, rooms with no doors or windows, and always a voice calling to them from somewhere they couldn't see. The dreams weren't like normal dreams. They felt real, more real than being awake. And there were other people there, people from the study. They could see each other, talk to each other. It was like they were all in the same place. But perhaps most disturbing were the reports about the pills themselves. Emma Rodriguez had told her roommate that the pills made her feel disconnected from her body, like her consciousness was floating free. Peter Copley had described feeling like his thoughts were merging with something larger, something that included other minds. And Justin Leland had confided to his neighbor that after taking the pills, he sometimes couldn't tell the difference between dreaming and being awake. He said it was like living in two worlds at once. The real world felt distant and unimportant, while the dream world felt more vivid and meaningful than anything he'd ever experienced. When investigators questioned Nurse Marissa, the only staff member who had gone home before the disappearances, her testimony was deeply unsettling. She confirmed that all participants seemed fine when she left at 7 a.m., but she knew something was different about this study. Dr. Harris was secretive about those pills. He mixed them himself in a small lab he'd set up in his basement. When she asked him what was in them, he said it was proprietary research that would revolutionize sleep medicine. As the investigation continued, a former employee of the Northlight Sleep Institute came forward. What they revealed painted a picture of an organization that had been pushing the boundaries of ethical research for months. The anonymous whistleblower contacted the authorities with a story that seemed to belong in the realm of science fiction rather than medical research. Dr. Harris wasn't just studying sleep. He was trying to create a permanent dream state where multiple consciousnesses could exist together. He called it collective dream architecture, the idea that minds could be linked together in a shared psychological space. The whistleblower described how Dr. Harris had spent months perfecting his compound, testing different formulations on volunteers who had no idea they were participating in consciousness experiments. He believed that if he could get enough people dreaming together, while under the influence of his compound, he could create a stable alternate reality, a place that existed only in sleep, but felt completely real to those inside it. The implications were staggering. If true, it meant that the Northlight Sleep Institute hadn't been conducting routine sleep research at all. They had been trying to build a world made of dreams, and somehow 15 people had become trapped inside it. 6 weeks after the disappearances, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A laptop belonging to Dr. Harris was discovered in a skip less than a mile from the institute. The timing was suspicious. Why would someone dispose of crucial evidence weeks after the disappearances? And how had it ended up in such an obvious location? Theories abounded about who might have dumped the laptop. Had someone escaped from the institute that night and only now felt safe enough to dispose of evidence? Had an accomplice been hiding the device and finally decided to get rid of it? Or had someone broken into the abandoned building and found the laptop, only to panic and throw it away? The most unsettling possibility was that the laptop had been placed there deliberately, left where it would be found by someone who wanted investigators to discover its contents. But who? And why wait 6 weeks? The laptop's hard drive had been almost entirely wiped, but forensic technicians managed to recover fragments of data from the damaged sectors. Most of it was corrupted beyond repair, but they found Dr. Harris's research notes and one audio file. The research revealed the true scope of the Northlight project. Dr. Harris had been working on something he called collective dream architecture, the theory that multiple sleeping minds could be linked together using his specially formulated compound to create a shared psychological space. His private notes, written in increasingly erratic handwriting, described a progression through different phases of the experiment. Phase 1. Individual dream monitoring and compound calibration. Phase 2. Paired dream synchronization using low-dose compound. Phase 3. Small group dream sharing with medium-dose compound. Phase 4. Extended group consciousness with high-dose compound. Phase 5. Stable dream environment creation. Phase 6. Permanent dream space establishment. Phase 7. Complete consciousness transfer using maximum compound dosage. That final phase, Phase 7, appeared repeatedly in his later notes, always accompanied by excited annotations and theoretical calculations. One entry, dated just days before the disappearances, was particularly chilling. Phase 7 represents the ultimate goal, the creation of a permanent dream reality where consciousness can exist independently of the physical body. The compound at maximum dosage should allow participants to experience complete immersion in a world limited only by the collective imagination. The question is not whether they can enter this space, but whether they will want to return. Another note, written in red ink and underlined multiple times, read, "The compound creates neural pathways that didn't exist before. Once established, these pathways may become permanent. Participants may find the dream world more appealing than physical reality. This is not a side effect. This is the intended outcome." Those words would echo in investigators' minds for months to come. But it was the recovered audio file that proved most disturbing. The file was brief, just a few seconds of recording, but what it contained sent chills through everyone who heard it. A voice, speaking with an otherworldly calm, said, "We have found the place where consciousness goes to dream of itself. We are the dream that refuses to wake." The voice analysis was inconclusive. It could have been Dr. Harris, but the audio quality was too poor to be certain. What was certain was the timestamp. The file had been created at 3:18 a.m. on June 12th, just 1 minute after Justin Leland's warning had been recorded. We have found the place where consciousness goes to dream of itself. We are the dream that refuses to wake. Words that suggested the 15 missing people hadn't died or been kidnapped. They were somewhere else entirely. Somewhere between waking and sleeping, between reality and dreams. And they might still be there. As the investigation stalled, theories began to emerge about what had really happened at the Northlight Sleep Institute. Some were grounded in science, others ventured into the realm of the supernatural. The official police theory was that Dr. Harris had suffered a psychological breakdown and somehow convinced the participants to leave with him. Perhaps they were being held somewhere, or had been taken abroad. The synchronized dream reports were dismissed as the effects of an unknown drug. But other investigators weren't so sure. Dr. Anne Franklin, a neuroscientist at Leeds University, studied the recovered research data and the chemical analysis of Dr. Harris's compound. Her conclusions were disturbing. She said, quote, "Dr. Harris's work on dream synchronization was theoretically sound. We know that certain compounds can affect neurotransmitter activity in ways that influence dream states. We know that brainwaves can be synchronized through external stimulation. If he had found a way to chemically link multiple sleeping minds together, the results could have been unprecedented. The question wasn't whether he could have created a shared dream space. The question was whether 15 people could have become so immersed in that chemically induced space that they lost the ability to distinguish it from reality." Unquote. Dr. Michael Torres, a researcher in consciousness studies, proposed an even more radical possibility. He said, quote, "What if the compound created permanent changes in their brain chemistry? What if they achieved a form of collective lucid dreaming, a state where they were aware they were dreaming but chose to remain in the dream world rather than wake up? If the dream environment was sufficiently detailed and emotionally satisfying, and if the compound made it feel more real than physical reality, it was possible that the participants' consciousness became anchored there. They might be physically comatose, but mentally active in a shared psychological space." Unquote. But perhaps the most unsettling theory came from Dr. Elena Vasquez, a specialist in sleep disorders who had studied the effects of experimental compounds on dream states. She said, quote, "What if they weren't gone at all? What if they were still in that building, still lying in those beds, still dreaming? What if their bodies were there, but we couldn't see them because the compound had shifted them into a state between sleeping and waking, a state that our normal perception couldn't access?" Unquote. Dr. Harris's notes suggested he believed consciousness could exist independently of physical reality. What if he succeeded? What if 15 people were living full, complete lives in a dream world that felt more real to them than anything they ever experienced while awake? What puzzled investigators most wasn't just the disappearance of the 12 participants. It was the vanishing of the staff members who weren't taking the pills. Dr. Harris, Nurse Claire Holloway, and lab technician Callum Price had all disappeared without explanation, despite not being part of the experimental protocol. This contradiction spawned multiple theories. Some investigators suggested that prolonged exposure to participants under the influence of the compound might have created a proximity effect, where the staff were inadvertently drawn into the same consciousness state. Others proposed that Dr. Harris had been secretly dosing himself and his colleagues to experience the shared dream firsthand. The most disturbing theory came from Dr. Elena Vasquez, who suggested that the participants' collective consciousness had grown so powerful that it could pull others into its reality, like a gravity well of shared dreaming, drawing in anyone who came too close to its event horizon. Whatever the explanation, the disappearance of the staff who hadn't taken the pills suggested something far more unsettling than a simple drug reaction. It suggested that whatever had happened at Northlight that night had transcended the normal boundaries of physical reality. Despite being sealed as a crime scene, the abandoned Northlight Sleep Institute began to attract urban explorers, thrill seekers who specialized in infiltrating abandoned buildings. What they reported only added to the mystery. The first group to break in posted their experience on social media. The place still felt warm, like people just left. They went into the dormitory and swore they could hear breathing, even though they were alone. One explorer said he heard someone whisper his name, but when they turned around, nobody was there. Another explorer reported an even more disturbing encounter. While in the control room, looking at the old equipment, they heard a voice, really quiet, like it was coming from far away. It said something about not being there, about getting pulled in too. They ran out of there so fast, they left some of their equipment behind. But perhaps the most unsettling report came from a group that had brought camping equipment, intending to spend the night in the abandoned facility. They set up in the main corridor around midnight. Everything was quiet for the first few hours, but around 3 a.m., the same time as that security footage, things got strange. They all started feeling drowsy at the same time, which was odd because they'd been drinking energy drinks to stay awake. Then one of their group started talking in her sleep, but she wasn't asleep. Her eyes were open, but she was speaking like she was having a conversation with someone they couldn't see. She kept saying she could see them, that she wanted to come with them, to just let her sleep a little deeper. They shook her awake and got out of there immediately, but for days afterward, she kept talking about dreams where she was in white corridors with people she'd never met. She said they were calling to her, inviting her to join them permanently. These accounts were dismissed by authorities as the product of overactive imaginations and urban legend. But the reports kept coming, each one describing similar experiences: unexplained warmth, phantom voices, and the overwhelming sensation of being watched by invisible eyes. It was as if the building itself was protecting its secrets. 1 year after the disappearances, Detective Inspector Talbot held a press conference to announce that the case was being classified as unresolved disappearance under suspicious circumstances. They had exhausted all conventional investigative avenues. Despite extensive searches, interviews, and forensic analysis, they had found no evidence of what happened to the 15 individuals who vanished from the Northlight Sleep Institute. They had determined that the participants were given an experimental compound of unknown composition and effects. They believed this compound may have played a role in their disappearance. The case would remain open, and they would continue to investigate any new leads that emerged. What he couldn't say, was that the case had affected everyone who worked on it. Several investigators reported unusually vivid dreams. 2 officers requested transfers to different departments. The forensic technician who had recovered the audio files began suffering from chronic insomnia, afraid that sleep might somehow pull him into whatever space the 15 had found. It was as if the mystery itself was contagious, spreading through dreams and seeping into the subconscious minds of anyone who got too close to the truth. Today, the Northlight Sleep Institute stands empty and abandoned. The tinted windows are cracked, the parking lot overgrown with weeds, and faded police tape still flutters in the wind around the perimeter. But the building is not entirely forgotten. Local residents report strange phenomena in the area. Streetlights flicker without explanation. Car radios pick up fragments of whispered conversations in the dead of night. Some people claim to see figures moving behind the windows, shadowy forms that disappear when looked at directly. The building's owner has been unable to sell the property. Every potential buyer who tours the facility reports feeling uncomfortable, watched, as if invisible eyes are following their every move. One estate agent described the experience as the strangest thing. The building looked empty, but it didn't feel empty. It was like there were people there, just not in a way we could see. Sometimes there seemed to be faint voices, like people having a conversation in the next room. Urban explorers still occasionally break in, drawn by the mystery and the thrill of exploring a place where something impossible might have happened. Most leave quickly, unsettled by the atmosphere. Recently, rumors have circulated that the building's owner is considering demolition. The property has remained unsold for over a year. Maintenance costs are mounting, and the constant break-ins have become a liability issue. Plans have been drawn up to tear down the existing structure and build a small retail complex in its place. The proposal has been submitted to the local council and is awaiting approval. But the families of the missing 15 have organised fierce opposition to the demolition. They argue that their loved ones might still be alive somewhere within the building, existing in some state between sleeping and waking that science doesn't yet understand. To destroy the building, they claim, would be to murder 15 people who might still be saved. Petitions have been filed, protests have been organised, legal challenges are being prepared. The families have formed a group called the Northlight Preservation Society, dedicated to keeping the building intact until their missing relatives can be found, or until science advances enough to understand what really happened that night. They maintain vigils outside the building. They've hired private investigators. They've consulted with experts in consciousness research, quantum physics, and paranormal investigation, all because they believe, they have to believe, that somewhere in that empty building, 15 people are still dreaming, still alive, still waiting to be found. So what really happened at the Northlight Sleep Institute on that June night in 2023? Did Dr. Harris's compound succeed beyond his wildest dreams, creating a permanent, alternate reality where 15 people now live in a world made of shared consciousness? Are they trapped in an endless dream, unable to wake up, calling out warnings to anyone who might follow them into that strange space between sleeping and waking? Or did something even more extraordinary occur? Did they find something in that chemically induced dream state that was so compelling, so perfect, that they chose to abandon physical reality forever? The truth is, we may never know. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and sleep begins to take hold, you might find yourself wondering, what if they're still there? What if, in some dimension we can't perceive, 15 people are living full and complete lives in a world built from dreams and sustained by consciousness itself? What if the real question isn't where they went, but whether they ever want to come back? And if you find yourself thinking about the Northlight Sleep Institute as you drift off to sleep tonight, remember Justin Leland's words. Here, the dreaming never ends. We are more awake than you have ever been. Thanks for listening. If this story keeps you awake tonight, or perhaps makes you question what's waiting for you in your dreams, then I've done my job. If you enjoyed diving into this mystery with me, click the like button and subscribe for more stories that blur the line between reality and nightmare. And remember, the next time you take a pill to help you sleep, the next time you find yourself in a dream that feels too real, the next time you hear a voice calling from somewhere you can't see, think of the Northlight Sleep Institute. Think of 15 people who found something in their dreams that was more compelling than waking life. Sweet dreams, if you can manage them.